Hi, I'm Gordon Hepworth. The British monarch is the head of the Church of England. That's a religious organisation. The British monarch is unelected and unappointed except by accident of birth. Australia, as a modern nation, has hopefully moved away from that feudal garbage. The British monarch opens the British exhibitions at World Trade Fairs and gives speeches as to why the world should buy British, even though the British trade stand is in direct opposition to the Australian exhibition at that same venue. When an Australian and a Briton are figuring in a close finish of an international sporting event such as the Olympics or a World Championship, watch when the camera zooms in on the royal family and notice who they're barracking for. It's not for the Australian, and yet she's the Queen of Australia. He is going to become the King of Australia. Some people say they support the British monarch being Australia's head of state because their parents and grandparents supported the British monarchy and that it's part of our very culture. They're using the self-same arguments that religious people do. And yet a lot of these people who are monarchists say they're also atheists. But they're using the same arguments that religious people do, unsubstantiated arguments, and arguments based not on reason, but on, faith. This beautiful country of Australia, this wonderful country, was taken, stolen by the British, using a partly religious argument. Terra nullius is a legal expression deriving from Roman law meaning land belonging to no one. When the British wanted to occupy Australia, they used this legal argument in support of their unilateral invasion, even though they knew full well that the land did belong to someone. There were many tribes of Aborigines in Australia, and they vehemently objected to the invasion. At times they tried to fight off the invaders, and usually got killed in the process. The British swept the Aboriginals' prior right of settlement under the carpet by using the Christian argument the Aboriginals were savages. They had not been baptized, they were not of any recognized religion, they were not cultivating the land, and perhaps most tellingly, they had no military means to repel the invasion. So right from the very start, white Australia has been a religious Australia under a British monarch. White Australia has always been a Christian Australia under the British monarch, based in part on the ridiculous assertion that terra nullius was legal because the Aborigines who lived here and occupied the land were unreligious savages. It took the Mabo decision around 200 years later to nullify terra nullius. It took a referendum about 150 years after the occupation before white Australia would even deign to recognise Aborigines as human for the purposes of voting and for being included in the national census. And all of this because 18th century Britain used a specious mixture of legal and religious semantics to say that Aborigines didn't exist. just as religious folk use specious arguments to say that God does exist. I have to ask myself again, how can professed atheists expect their monarchist arguments to be taken seriously? I find myself struggling to understand how, if you're an Australian monarchist, you can also be an atheist. The two things are diametrically opposed.